with me on the recording, we're talking about our new versions coming out, and our new versions being like presents. We've got, and when we say SQL encompasses a lot of pieces of a product. It's not just SQL the host. So SQL the host version will be 11.15. Our Viewpoint version is actually yet to be exactly determined because we're still finishing up a few of the bugs or little things we found during testing. But just so you know, that version for Viewpoint is version 11, year 21, and then the XXX is relates to the day of the year, the Julian day of the year, and that's why that number is going to shift on us a little bit. It's not what it is, but what's great is we have done thorough testing and we found a couple of things that we sent back. And that is in part why we're not exactly on target for July to release this the way we wanted, but we're looking at really by mid-August for a delivery date. And it's much better we find whatever the bugs are than you do after we release it. So we're happy to hold it a little bit to make it a better version. We also have a new SQL Web Interface version, which is 10.33. And if you utilize the SQL Web Server, which is a component of the SQL Web Interface that allows you to have a server access, you're using this especially if you're in our newer mode called repository mode, or if you're running client tables from the browser, you're probably using it, and that will be version 2.8. And we even have a couple of fixes for eSend in version 3.62. And that's going to take us into kind of what these big presents are. And in this new version, we kind of have two themes for presents. We've got stability and modernization. And these are the themes that we utilize when we look at our roadmap going forward with the SQL suite of products. And you'll notice that I've got Viewpoint dashboards on both sides, both on stability and modernization. It's almost like we can't have one without the other. We can't give you new features in the dashboards until we kind of stabilize the dashboards. And what we've done is we've really rebuilt this code, the base code in the dashboards in this version, so that we can be in a better position in the next version to give you more modernization within those dashboards. And I know a lot of you have been waiting for enhancements for dashboards, and we're going to give you a teaser of it now, and then we're going to move forward in the next version with more that you see at the eye level. We'll talk a little bit about SQL Server drivers. We've got a great enhancement related to stability and performance for the Excel add-in. And we continue to make parser improvements. And by that, what I mean is so that Viewpoint, and even when running on the green screen, that our SQL parser is better equipped to support server syntax, that native DB2 SQL. And this is a mode that we'd like you to think about going to. It's very powerful. And the more we do there and enhance for Viewpoint to support that, the easier that will be. It's 2021, we always have to have some white source updates as part of our stability. But then we've got some fun things in terms of modernization and the Viewpoint server and the run remote command we're going to talk a little bit more deeply about in today's session. And we've got a couple new commands to mention, as well as some improvements to our view definitions. And so all of that is going to take us into first our most exciting enhancement probably, which are the dashboards. But remember, we're kind of straddling stability and modernization. And so think of the dashboards as being a gift. And if I gave you the gift of ice skates, they really wouldn't do you any good unless I built you an ice skating rink. Or you had a lake frozen to freeze on. So in order for us, again, to give you that glitz and glam, we have to first build the rink. And this is what this version is going to do. Within our 11.15 release of Viewpoint, we're building you the ice skating rink. And what we've done is rebuilt the code at the base. And then we've also given you one enhancement that you'll visually see. We've got, while you're in design mode, a new properties panel for the designer. And this is where Jackie's going to come in and give us a demo of what is new. So Jackie, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
And now we can see your dashboard.
Perfect. Thank you, Cheryl. So as Cheryl mentioned, I'm going to be opening up one of the presents that she mentioned. So I'm going to be talking about the new features in our dashboard designer with our latest version of Viewpoint and a couple of changes. But let's open the present first and start with the big new feature. So in the dashboard designer, you still have the ability to add your usual items like your SQL object, graphic, text box, etc. But now we have this one-stop shop to manage all of those items, and that is called the Properties panel. It's shown here on the right-hand side, and I have it open by default. It's found under the File menu, so File, Properties. Now, if I click it now, you'll see it kind of flash. That's just telling you it's already open. I can go ahead and hide the Properties panel by clicking this arrow in the right-hand corner. Maybe if I want some more real estate while I'm designing, and then I can click that arrow again to show it. So the really neat thing about the Properties panel is that it truly is a one-stop shop. So when I click on this drop-down arrow, right now it's on Dashboard, which is the dashboard workspace, and I see a list of all the other items that are presently on my dashboard. So starting with the dashboard, I can change my background color, and an added feature, so this is probably like a little stocking stuffer inside of the present, is you can now select an actual graphic or an image to be your background. So instead of a solid color, I could just click on this file name line and then click on this little ellipsis to choose my graphic, like a company logo, maybe. I can change my dashboard title, and I can adjust and turn on my grid spacing. And just as a reminder, the snap to grid, here, I'll turn it on just to show you real quick, I know what it looks like. So it's a nice feature for designing because it allows you to keep your objects lined up by using the dots on the grid. And I can change the size of those dots if I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. So as I move my objects around, I can visually see where I want them to be snapped to. Back to dashboard, I'm going to turn that off. So another new feature for, sorry, let me go back here. Let's check the text box because that's another item that's on the dashboard. So whenever I choose one of these items, you can see it gets selected here. So here, if I wanted to change my background color of my text box, I can turn on the border or turn it off, change your font. Probably most importantly, this is where you would change the text of your text box. So I'm going to take out just designer for a moment, and it changes it. You can change your location and your size of your object here as well. And I can do that for my other objects. So I'm doing this all in the Properties panel in one place. Another new feature for the dashboards is what we call dashboard defaults. And this is under the Options menu, Options, Dashboard Defaults. So this is nice to have, especially if you're going to be designing a lot of dashboards and you need to have kind of like a template or like a company standard. So you could set all your dashboards going forward to be a certain color. Say your company color is blue. You could change it to be blue here for your workspace color. And whether or not you want to use that snap to grid or adjust your grid spacing. And I can also check this box, apply settings to this dashboard if I want to start using these defaults right now on this current dashboard. Yet another present that we have for you is the ability to work with objects from different systems and libraries. So just in case you didn't know, you can have objects on the dashboard that are from different systems. So it's helpful, again, if you're dealing with multiple dashboards and you have multiple systems. So it's under Options, Change SQL Objects in System Library. And so here you can see my SQL objects, and I have them coming from 2 different systems. And if I wanted to change one of these, I'm going to change this one on the bottom. I'm going to change the system from the current system, which we call Stitch, to HS44. And this object happens to be in the same library. I'm not going to make a change here, but you can. I'm going to click Apply, and you see the system changed. So when I click OK, dashboard's going to refresh. And it may ask you to sign in to that other system. It asked me before the webinar, so I didn't show that part, but just be aware that it may prompt you to sign in for that new system. So when you're designing a dashboard, I'm sure many of you know, oftentimes you'd like to see how the dashboard is going to interact when an end user runs it. Now, in the past, you'd have to save your dashboard, get out of design mode, and then run it. But we have added something that keeps you in the designer and you can see how it's going to run without leaving the designer. That's under Options, and it's called Enter SQL Results Mode. So for example, let's say I want to sort this view here, this customer inquiry view. I'm going to select SQL Results Mode. And now I have the ability to sort. So it's pretending like an end user is running it. And I'm going to exit that mode for now. So that's a nice, it's a time saver, definitely, for designing your dashboards. So I also mentioned we do have a couple of changes that go in line with our new features of the dashboard designer. One of those is inserting an action button. You still use the insert menu and select action button, and it puts it up here on the left. And I'm going to drag that down and stretch it out just a little bit so it's bigger. So action button is now an item on our workspace, and you can see it popped up in the properties panel. So most importantly, this is where you're going to tell the action button what it's going to do. So it's under action on the command line, and there's a drop-down arrow. Most often you're going to run a SQL object, so I'm going to choose that. And I'm going to pick the view called AR. And then it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with the view? Do you want to display, print, email? I'm just going to display it. And we can also change the color and the font here like we can with our other items. This is where you're going to change your text. So instead of it saying the default, which is action button, I'm going to say this runs the AR view. And as with the other items, you can change the location and your size. And here's where you're going to decide, maybe you want this button to run automatically when the dashboard is launched by an end user. Sometimes people have a script that runs from an action button, and maybe you just want that to run in the background. So we could have it auto run in the dashboard, or you could have it hidden so that it just runs and the results are displayed, so they don't have to click on the button itself. And one other change is how you bring in a chart. Chart is now under the insert menu. Now, in the past, you would look at your view and you would select what you wanted to graph. And there would be an option here to insert your graph. Now we're putting that under the insert menu. So insert chart. And now it's going to prompt me for my actual data. I'm just going to pull a few records from this view. And I'm going to click OK. So here's my chart. Let me just rearrange. So again, now the chart is listed under our properties panel, and we have all the same options that we have with our other items, but where do we control the chart? Maybe I don't want a pie chart, or maybe I want to change my legend or how my values look, or even my title. That is right under chart and properties, and there's an ellipsis button there. So that brings up the familiar graph control box, which many of you have probably seen if you'd worked with charts in the past. So we can do all of our fun stuff with our charts here. Here you can also set your border if you don't want a border to be shown. And again, that location and size, all controlled in the properties panel. So I am going to go ahead and save my dashboard. I'm going to exit design mode. And I am going to run it like an end user would. So all my items are loaded, and you see obviously the properties panel is no longer here because it's a design mode feature only. And let me just test my action button. So it should run the AR view, and there's my AR view. So those are our present, our new features, and a couple of changes with our new dashboard designer with latest Viewpoint.
Great, thanks for that, Jackie.
You're welcome.
All right, just swinging back to our PowerPoint, we're going to dive into our next topic, which is about client reports and client tables. And you can see my PowerPoint, Jackie?
I see what's new with SQL. Now I see it. Yes, we see it. Client reports and tables. Got it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so they are what they say they are. These are reports and tables that run on the client. They're viewpoint based. They're pretty powerful. Everyone gets the client tables. The client reports are an additional license, nominal, and they utilize crystal reports, which is pretty powerful. And what makes them, like I said, a little bit different is they're client based. So if you're in Viewpoint running them, no problem. But you do have to have a second thought if you're going to think about submitting them to batch or want to run them in a job scheduler, or if you're running them from the SQL Web Interface. And these are kind of a two-part running. Each client report and client table have a view that they're based on. And the view is what runs on the host and extracts the data from your files, and then it passes it on to the client reporter table, and it does the massaging and makes it look all pretty. And so there's that caveat. If you want to submit it, you still need a place to actually run this client object. And we have had a lot of history here with doing this. And for those of you who have been part of SQL for a long time, you may have set up a Viewpoint server that utilizes the run remote command. This was our original design. And so if you want to think about this as you've got a job running in batch, and what it does is it says, go find this PC server and run this request remotely. And it worked well. The run remote command, it could be just slightly tricky the first time you were setting up the syntax of the command. But the caveat here is that IBM client access is required, and client access is only supported up until Windows 7. So if you wanted to upgrade your Windows Server beyond Windows 7, you couldn't utilize run remote command anymore. So last year, when we introduced 11.14, we came up with a different solution using IBM Access Client Solutions and their listener service. In doing so, we had to develop our own command called Viewpoint Remote Command, which was identical to the run remote command, except it used this listener service. The caveat with this scenario is that it requires the user to be signed in to the Viewpoint Listener PC, and this is defined by IBM Access Client Solutions. So moving forward in 11.15, which we are going to be releasing very soon, we have a third option. And this is truly, it's the best option at all because it removes the need for a separate PC-based server. In 11.15, we're able to utilize a host-based Java Crow engine that is going to run those, just the Crow reports right now. In the future, we're going to work on the client tables. But we've got more folks that run client reports in a batch environment right now than the client tables, but that will be next up. But what it does is it still runs that view on the host, but now it's going to take and run that client report also on the host. So if you can imagine the performance saving there, it's quite substantial. Instead of using run remote command, we're going to be using our command called SQJ Crow. This is a new SQL command, and I'll show you the prompts in just a second because it is much more straightforward than doing a run remote command. The one caveat here is that this requires Crystal version 11. And if you've used SQL for a very long time with your Crow license, you may not have Crystal number 11. You might have Crystal, what they call XI, like Roman numeral 11. And you'll have to we'll work with you to get you upgraded. And we can do that on a case-by-case basis, but I just wanted to put it out there. It does require a specific version of Crystal based upon when you licensed from us. Now, these commands for the SQJ Crow are really, so much easier. If you've ever set up the run remote command, I mean, once you've done it once and then you can kind of repeat it, but you have to use PC-based command line switches in the command, and this is so much more straightforward. On the left, I've just shown you the command prompt from the green screen. On the right, I'm showing you the command prompt from inside Viewpoint inside of the script designer. Most likely, if you're going to set these up, you're probably going to set them up in a script. The run remote commands were, because again, those were complicated commands. This is so much easier, and if you're going to plug this into a job scheduler, this command will be nothing different than scheduling, say, an execute command. You've got the report name. You just tell us what PC format you want the output in, and whether or not you want a file on the IFS, or do you want us to email it, or both? And then if you're emailing, there's a place for the message. And that is really the best way for us to run these. And this is what's coming in 11.15. I'm sure we're going to have some questions on those. And if you utilize this process heavily, I would encourage you to strike up a conversation with the support team, and we can make sure that you've got the documentation in place. Now, if you're running Crow reports from the SQL Web Interface, this process comes into play as well, because from the browser, we also needed a place to run those client requests. And for right now, this just applies to the client reports, but inside of this command that says set SWI viewpoint defaults, this controls how those requests are run. And there's a new parameter, and it's right at the bottom that says use the SQL Java server. And if that's set star yes, and you've got 11.15 or higher installed, those Crow requests from the browser will run on the host and be served right back to the browser. If that Java server parameter is set to no, then we look at the first parameter on that screen called communication method, and star remote command says, hey, try a run remote command, and star data queue uses that middle method of the viewpoint listener and uses a VPT remote command. Again, this is a lot of information, but we are happy to kind of go through it more in depth with you. And just so you know, if you've got run remote command embedded in your scripts or the VPT remote command, we do have a mechanism to search and find certain commands in a script. And we've got actually a really great help fact on that on the portal that's maybe a start for you to see what impact this is in your environment. Okay, now we've got a handful of host changes as well coming in. We've got a new SQL Server driver. We're going to be shipping version 9.2 of the SQL Server driver for your remote connections. Maybe selfishly, we've improved the display view D command to include all your subtotaling information. You know how in Viewpoint, when you run a view, you are able to, at the results tab, add some subtotals. Now that information will be captured in your view definition. And so that's even great if you document your view definitions, but it's also great for us if we're trying to help you sort out a problem with a view that we see that there's totaling on those views. We've got a couple new commands that we'll look at. And then last but not least, there was a green screen fix to the design view. We introduced a problem in 11.14. And trust me, if you use the green screen designer heavily, you've probably given us a call and said, hey, what happened? Because what would, if you had any sort of error in that SQL, it would end your session abruptly, and we've gotten you fixes for that, and just be assured that that fix is in 11.15. Our command is, one of our new commands is check IFS lock, and this is going to be extremely helpful when we are doing future installs to help you find locks on our objects. When you do a local sys server command, that holds a lock on a Java object, and this will just be cleaner for releasing that lock. We also have a new command related to user-based licenses if you have one of those, and this will show you your licenses. And this is much better than going into work license info, and it's also using all of our new code, and we're no longer using an IBM API that perhaps you've seen, I'll call them phantom locks on your user-based locks for jobs that don't exist. That will go away with 11.15. We've got a few SQL Web interface enhancements, a couple to the classic interface, you know, that interface where you use the URL. We fixed a calendar prompt issue where you wouldn't get the calendar prompt in some instances when the date style parameters didn't align. And we've also added support for dependent variables in SWI. What that means is if you had a variable for, say, product class and also for product number, we would only show you the product numbers within that product class. So that now works from inside of the older interfaces of SQL Web Interface. And for our Swiss users, we have some white source updates. Last but not least, back to Viewpoint, the Excel add-in has some performance improvements. If you've never used the add-in, I would encourage you to do so. It allows you from Viewpoint, it has a tab for, from Excel, has a tab for Viewpoint and to add a view, and it will feed data directly from your view into an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going back to skating for this analogy. The performance improvement here is dramatic. It would be like comparing me on ice skates to an Olympic speed skater, between the old and the new. So if you're using the add-in, I strongly encourage you to get this new version of Viewpoint when it's available. I've got a few mentions about education and services. We've got some great classes available online. We have public classes you can join if you want something more specific, or you have a group of folks. We have those types of classes. If you just need some help one-on-one, we can do quick sessions there, and we have a brand new class related to drill down. So if you haven't used a drill down application, I encourage you to invest the time of 2 hours for this class. It'll give you a really great jump start into this class and into this feature, and get you drilling into your data very quickly. I'm sorry I had to rush a little bit at the end. I'm trying to make sure that we end at the bottom of the hour, and I just want to check if we have any questions. And again, you'd have to chat those in into the chat feature. So far, so good. Maybe everybody had to run and go eat some lunch. I just want to remind you, we're here to help you, and we encourage you to contact us, especially if you have questions about anything about this new release. We do expect to have it out by mid-August. And so if you've contacted us with any sort of fix that's needed, we will be reaching out to you when that version is available. And you'll see it posted on our community portal. If you're looking for the chat feature on our community portal, it has moved to the Contact Us page. And so you could reach out to us there. And of course, we're always available through our standard methods of email and phone. I want to thank you so much for your continued support of SQL and all of our products, and for being part of the Help Systems family. It's been a great ride for all the years that we've been part of Help Systems, and we hope that we encourage you to stay part of the Help Systems family and look at our other offerings. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate your commitment to SQL.
Thank you.